Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Bible study. We're trying to study through one chapter of the Bible every day until we get to the end. Lord willing, that will happen. We are in Genesis chapter 37 today. If you want the handout that has all this information on it, you can get it for free on our website. There's a link down in the description. So let's talk about Genesis 37. When did these events take place? Well, we're going to read about Joseph, who was one of Jacob's sons, being sold into slavery by his brothers. That happened in approximately 1728 BC. One thing that's really interesting to keep in mind is that although we read about the death of Isaac, you remember him, Abraham's son, we read about his death back in chapter 35. That wasn't necessarily in chronological order because he's still alive when Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery. Isaac probably didn't die until 15 to 20 years after Joseph was sold. In terms of our main characters, we have Jacob. He is Isaac's son. Remember, God changed his name to Israel. And then we've got our character who's going to be the real main character for the next couple chapters, and that is Joseph. He was one of the sons of Jacob. He was the favorite son of Jacob because the text says that he was the son of his old age. And then finally, we have Joseph's 11 brothers. So these are all the other sons of Jacob, and their names have already been listed. They were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and Benjamin. So now let's consult the map and think about our where. Jacob's camp was in Hebron, or the valley of Hebron. Jacob's sons were pasturing his flock in a place called Dothan. And at the end of the chapter, Joseph's brothers are going to sell him into slavery in Egypt, which was, southwest of Canaan. So then thinking about our outline, the first section is just an introduction to Joseph. We've heard his name before, it's been listed, but really this is where we get introduced to him. The chapter opens by telling us that Joseph was the favorite son of Jacob, and that he was 17 years old when the events of this chapter took place. Joseph's brothers hated him because he was the favorite. And we're told that Jacob gave Joseph a special coat or a special robe that was made out of many colors. In the next section, verses 5 through 11, Joseph's dreams are recorded, and he tells those dreams to his family, which may not have been the best idea. So one day, Joseph had a dream, and he recounted it to his brothers. He dreamed that they were binding sheaves in the field, and Joseph's sheaf stood up, and all of his brothers' sheaves bowed down to his. And when he told this to his brothers, they hated him even more than they had hated him originally. But Joseph had a second dream, and he felt the need to tell this one as well. He dreamed that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars came and bowed down before him. And when he told this dream to his father Jacob, Jacob actually rebuked him, saying, "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" But we are told that Jacob kept these dreams in his mind, as if maybe he thought that there really was something to them, and maybe the future would play that out somehow. So then our final and our biggest section is verses 12 through 36. Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery in Egypt. So Jacob sent Joseph one day to check on his brothers who were pasturing his flock. And Joseph found them in Dothan. And as Joseph was approaching his brothers, they actually decided that they were going to kill him. And they put together a plot that they were going to do him in right then and there. But Reuben, who is the oldest brother, said, "No, let's not do him any harm. Let's actually throw him into this pit." And Reuben had a plan, or intentions at least, to come back to the pit to save Joseph and to bring him back to his father safely. So when Joseph finally approached them, the brothers seized Joseph and they threw him into this pit. Well, a while later, when Reuben was gone, there was this caravan of Ishmaelite traders, and Joseph's brothers sold him to these Ishmaelite traders as they were headed down to Egypt. And they sold him for 20 shekels of silver. Now, in order to deceive their father as to Joseph's real fate, they took his coat of many colors, they killed a goat, and then they dipped his coat in the blood of the goat. And they allowed their father to believe that Joseph had been attacked by some wild animal and killed. Jacob was heartbroken, and he put on sackcloth and he mourned for his son. Jacob's sons and his daughters tried to console him, but he wouldn't be consoled. The end of the chapter tells us that Joseph was taken down to Egypt and he was sold as a slave to a guy named Potiphar, who was an officer of Pharaoh's. He was Pharaoh's captain of the guard. So that is Genesis chapter 37. It's the beginning of the very well-known story of Joseph. So now let's talk about an application. Life may not always be fair, but envy is not the right response. It wasn't fair that Joseph was the favorite child, but Joseph's 11 brothers couldn't do anything about their father's favoritism. They could only control the way that they responded to the reality of it. And we can't control that life isn't fair. We can only control the way that we respond to the realities of the world. Envy doesn't solve anything. It's not a solution. And it's actually listed as one of the works of the flesh in the book of Galatians, in contrast to the works of God's Spirit. Although we may not always understand why things are the way that they are, we can be confident that God is in control of his world and that things are going to be made right in the end. God will see to that. So with that knowledge, we can be at peace even in a world that is often unfair.